Okay. So one of the things, just in an applied way, is really, I don't always say Google is your friend, but when it comes to finding a videos on specific topics, Google can really be a great way. And we talked last time a little bit about when you're workshopping a story, it's always helpful to have examples. And so I wanted to um, once I'll go through some introductory information here, but I'll show you some examples of things that have been used. But I wanted to just describe a couple things. One is there's been a few digital story workshop within communities. Some of them have been Blackfeet. Here's a few that have been created by colleagues at Montana State University. And then there's some history. The history ones are really important for many reasons to many of the tribal communities that we serve in our state. It really acts to really preserve some of the cultural knowledge and history, and as we'll talk about, those really pertain to some of the health disparities that we see as far as prevention factors and ways we can look at strength-based approaches. Language, so we have a colleague here at the university who does a lot of linguistic work and has some really wonderful linguistic resources available online that her and her students have developed. So this is a cool, so we'll look at some of these examples in a minute. But I wanted to just make sure that we orient, and especially for those who are watching online, session 3, what we're going to do is just briefly review the basics and think about sharing stories that we may create in the future, or we may have created. And so, what are the kind of basic elements of video? We'll just review those quickly, and then talk about the script and how important that is to digital stories. And this is really true for any sort of, a script is the equivalent of like the academic paper, right? Or like the PowerPoint that you're giving, or all of those different things. And it's really the crux of how you're trying to engage people in a desired outcome, whether that be behavior change or, risk mitigation or those kinds of things. So that script is really a critical part. And then the shot list really just is your visual representation of your script. And that's where you have your images, your video, those sorts of things. We talked last time about distributing digital stories and like kind of some of the whys and the whos and the whats and why nots and those kind of frequently asked questions about distributing videos, and then thinking about the why. So I wanted to talk a little this morning about why some of these things are so important, just to underscore the importance and significance of your work, each of you, in public health. One of the things that we know is that health in Montana is honestly a really mixed bag, but there's a lot of things, as we know, that we struggle with as a state. I was just reviewing some of the health statistics last night and this morning, and we have some really serious challenges when it comes to health disparities. The suicide risk for all populations in the state is very high. When we compare that to other states, it's often, if not the highest, one of the top, 4 or 5 states in the nation for suicide risk. That speaks to many factors, and it's a really tragic situation, and one that is something that we as public health folks can really focus on, looking at prevention and looking at helping people gain access to care. One of the factors we talked about a little bit the first session we shared was chronic illness, and in our rural areas, when people suffer from chronic illnesses, things like diabetes, maybe that they might require dialysis care or other kind of more frequent high level medical care, it can be really difficult for folks in rural communities to access that. Sometimes we've seen people move to more urban areas, or within Native communities move to reservations that have dialysis centers on them. And so oftentimes we'll hear stories of people driving for many hours to receive healthcare. We also have topics that are challenging for many of us, in our rural areas is we've had sexual health issues. We have one of our colleagues here, Nikki Graham, really specializes in sexual health trainings and has done some really wonderful work looking at how do we kind of intervene with regard to sexually transmitted diseases and then also other stigmatized topics like when we thought about like hepatitis C being one and sharing needles with people who are drug users. Those things are really, can be controversial, but they're really a public health aspect of how do we stop exposures to particular viral outbreaks, bacterial type of things. And so when we think about those kinds of topics, it can be really helpful for us to consider how do we make engaging public health content that has people who may be at more risk accessing information that they may need, like how to have safer practices in these different domains. Substance abuse, another, is also very stigmatized in some ways, but it also is very much driving some of the health disparities that we see. Mental health, as we know, is correlated to all of these factors. People who have chronic conditions more likely to have depression, as an example. People who have substance abuse more likely to have be treating an underlying mental health condition through substance abuse. And so it calls for a lot of compassion in how we approach not only the topics, but the people. Whoops, I went the wrong way. So this is just a quick slide that talks a little bit about some of the social determining factors in health. So we know that adverse childhood experiences really correlate strongly to later and lifetime health outcomes. So we think about if you have exposure to child abuse or dysfunction, serious kind of dysfunction in the family, that's associated with risky behaviors and chronic health conditions and even premature death long term, which is really, it's hard, for all of us, I think, to grapple with, but there are ways to intervene. And that's the hopeful message of the whole thing, right? But there was a study in 2011 by the state, and they found that 60% of Montanans reported at least one adverse childhood experience. So we know that a lot of folks have experienced some pretty significant losses or challenges within their history. And then we also know that poverty, a real complex topic here in Montana, because since and during the pandemic, we've had in some of our quote unquote, like our urban areas like Missoula, we've had an influx of people with much higher income actually in some of our areas. And it's created a larger and sort of more difficult gap between people who have wealth and accumulated wealth and those who do not, or who struggle with like making basic needs kind of. And so, here in Missoula, you see a lot of evidence of that. You see very high housing prices, very high, even vehicle prices. You see a lot of overcrowded housing. You see a lot of people even living in campers and things because they cannot afford or find a place to rent and things like that. So that's a kind of a changing demographic within our state. Within our rural state, of course, we've seen for many years a lot of folks moving out of our rural areas, and but Montana continues to be a very rural state, and so a lot of Montanans proportionally live in our more rural areas. So this comes back to that why it's helpful to start to think creatively about how we message some of these factors, like thinking about video, think about podcasts, thinking about, what's the term? Webinar type of things, these vlogs, that's the word I was looking for, video blogs, so those kinds of like more creative ways that people are looking. So a couple things that I just wanted to share, when we think about public health, chronic disease being a really important part of that, cancer and cardiovascular disease here in Montana are very important sources of mortality and morbidity. we see that 48% of Montanans, this is within a specific time frame prior to the pandemic, died of cancer and heart disease and stroke and cardiovascular. So these are the leading causes of premature death, including unintentional injury. And what that includes is like, as you all know, like motor vehicle accidents or ranching accidents, or you name it. There's a lot of things in Montana that we can kind of get in trouble with if we're in a rural area and are not close to a hospital. So those things are important. Tobacco use, when we think about tobacco use is quite high in Montana. I was kind of shocked when I was looking at this. Like 1 in 4 adults in 2016 were current tobacco users. And that seemed high to me, but when you think about that, smokeless tobacco also included there, right? So we think about not only smoked in tobacco, higher among American Indian communities, and so that's important. And all of these corresponds to risk especially with regard to cancer and heart disease. So we see those things really kind of interrelated. And then physical inactivity. So half of the year for many places in Montana, it is more challenging to be physically active, right? In the winter, especially if we had a winter like this past winter where it was hard to just get across the road as opposed to staying active and things. So these are things that we think about when we think about public health. So behavioral health, I mentioned earlier. So nearly 1 in 10, and I this is prior to the pandemic, so I know that this is higher now, have a substance use disorder here in Montana. Young adults have some of the highest alcohol use disorders and alcohol dependency rates in the country, and so that's pretty concerning in many ways. And then of course we've heard about the opioid misuse, and now we're looking at hearing a lot more about fentanyl and these different types of drugs that public health wise can also be really difficult and scary because they can be absorbed through the skin, and so some of these things can be really important for us to look at prevention and best practices. Where I work in the Payne Family Native American Center on campus. We've started to have Narcan kits for overdoses that are readily available in our kitchen areas and common areas and those sorts of things. And we hope, very much hope that we never have to use anything like that. But it is proved to be good practice to have some of these kind of resources on hand. And then I mentioned suicide rate, and then, the mental health and substance use getting treatment. A lot of folks do not have access to treatment. And if they do, they may have to wait for months. They may have to go out of state for specialty care. And this is particularly true for younger Montanans. So for our teens and our adolescents and even children, to getting them specialty care. So there's some great documentaries if you're interested in this. Glenn Close was involved with one documentary. I think it might have been with Oprah on mental health on Apple TV. And the portion that includes Glenn Close talks about Montana specifically and rural healthcare needs. And so if you're interested in that, as far as the advocacy and just looking a little bit at the extent of the problem, that's a great documentary that talks about a lot about mental health and stigma, and it's a good example of how something like a digital story can be kind of expanded into documentary film and looking at kind of health messaging in those ways too. So are there any questions about some of the health disparities or? Okay, no questions.
I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
And I don't know how to work this this new desktop video, so I'm here. Okay, I'm just gonna step my foot into the public health certificate. I'm getting ready to do that. So I have a million questions. So I just was enjoying listening to your
Oh, great.
dermatology, and I'm like, wow, what am I getting into? So yeah, it's very interesting. I tried to make a little story, but I put it on PowerPoint because I'm old school.
He's good.
I don't know how to share it. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So I was pretty much a homemaker, and I did my own crafts my whole life. And then in 2013, my son was graduating high school and decided to go back to college after 25 years. And so that's what I mean. What am I getting myself into again? So I originally wanted to be a social worker when I was 19, and then I had my kids and lived my life, and then I stepped back into it, and everything was like electronic, and there's no more typewriters, and I would laugh at myself because everything's all changed since I went to college, and you know, so I just had fun with my kids, and they're showing me how to do everything, and I said, I'm going to take this class and see what happened, or this on the Zoom, and learn all what I can about digital storytelling because it's right up my alley. I like to do that. But like I said, the world has changed. So yeah, this is
Oh,
really interesting.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I really love it. And and like you were saying, I struggle with technology, as Emily knows. I was just like trying to find the Zoom link before this and couldn't find it. So I totally, and that's why it's important not to get too like focused on like the details of digital storytelling, because the technology changes like every day with all of these different apps and the way things work, and all these different and the cool thing is that you can use your kids and those who are younger than you to show you how to navigate some of the technology, but then also just resources like YouTube and different video, even social media platforms like I I think Instagram may have some tutorials, and just but the how to do some of the but for YouTube definitely has tutorials on how to use any kind of software, how to create some of the things from a technical component. Same thing as like with the audio mixing and things. um, to me, what is the most important is just the story that you're telling, and that's really like so important and engaging to people. So, we kind of walk through some of the health statistics a little bit, but you can see, for any one of those conditions, like you could talk to somebody who's been impacted by that condition or lost somebody, to these other, like say they've had a family member who has struggled with substance abuse, or had cancer. um, you know, Telling their story can really be a powerful way to, engage people in that message, and then, having people think about, are there ways that I could reduce my risk? Are there ways that I could help my family in a different way? And so yeah, I really appreciate that, and I think these things can be really applied, in any um, public health kind of way, and that's why I mentioned like I've been just trying to mess around a little bit with like trying to like learn how to do podcasts. Also not good with the technology. um and I mentioned vlogs too. That's just like, people will just pull up a Zoom presentation and record themselves as they're talking and put that out. And I was going to show you some examples of that too, of people who've done that, and actually, really been pretty successful doing some health literacy trainings, and people get funded to do these things and those sorts of ways, especially for our rural community members. It can be really helpful, really great ways, and great ways to get high quality public health information out into the places that may need it the most. Because strangely, like I don't know how strangely it is, but like Montana, I think the pandemic, we all have better access points to technology. Um, Before the pandemic, there were still a lot of places that really didn't have very good access, and I think that's changed quite a bit, even in our most rural areas. So that's a pretty cool thing. Any other questions or comments or?
I was gonna try to share with you my little story maybe, but it was on PowerPoint and I did not get to the Vimeo and I was watching the Canva and I was like, whoa, maybe I'll need a little more time on that. But so I was trying to share with you what little snippet I did, but with
Yeah,
no voice.
that'd be great.
That sounds
Um,
fine. You should be able to share your screen as well.
I've been working here for a year at this treatment center in Wolf Point. I don't want to reveal any names.
Sure.
And we do the basic, aftercare. But I also realize when people are coming back from treatment, they still didn't answer this question.
Mhm.
Who am I? Where am I going? What do I want? Because they just had that few like 30, 90 days to get back their life back. But they
Mhm.
still have to get back to who are you or what do you want? What did you like to do? What's your bucket list? And then we
Yeah.
go from there.
Mhm.
So here's my little who are you? There's me on my two kids, the accountant in training and the artist. Okay.
Wow.
So to me, living a life that includes mindfulness in Native American culture is beneficial to keeping a healthy balance in all situations. Growing up with my grandparents, their stories of perseverance, resilience, and positivity have led me to a greater path toward keeping my heart in the right place. I believe that true healing and recovery begins with a journey to yourself.
Mhm.
Nice.
It's wonderful.
So this is a little bit about me, what I do. Do I have to read it? Okay. I've been working with clients for a year now, and I'm glad I'm still in training because there's a lot to learn. So I have just less than 5 in aftercare when they come back from treatment, residential treatment. And then I noticed that goals differ depending if they were like a wife or an unemployed guy or it varies. So I always ask them in my own little personal packet, like, what do you want to do? Or
Mm.
what did you like to do? Where do you think you're going? Because sometimes they didn't think about it. They
Mhm.
numbed, you know what I'm saying? They numbed everything and
Yeah.
they just have to get back on track. So I had a little packet that we have little handouts on, hobbies, interests, anything cultural, anything, fishing. One guy played pool, somebody wants to play tennis, somebody wants to go on a trip to New York, and so we try to keep it simple but
Cool.
fun. And I just try to get them to reveal their true self, and then start healing from there. Because everything by the book is gets boring, and we have little workbooks, and after a while, I can see their eyes like roaming. I'm like, oh, they don't get into this. So, so I have them do a list, and we start our little goals, and then that's what we start doing.
Mm-mm.
I'm
Mhm.
loving
So,
this.
I do too.
Oh, this
and
is cool.
I say, well, let's get going. What do you want to do? And so the next week they bring me their homework or what did they do? Spend time with kids, bake bread, anything. Pick rocks. Because a lot of times there's not really much to do up here.
Mm.
I included little things. We went on road trips. You can go fishing. You can bead. You can make earrings. I haven't done those in about 2 years, but you can just have coffee. Relax, do something mindful. So
Mhm.
that's what.
Oh, I love this so much.
I
Also,
love
I
So
it.
love
trying
your
to get it.
presentation. It's very pretty. It's very soothing. And I
Yes.
love this concept again. And that's such a big part of healing. And I loved your
Yeah,
question of like, who were you and who do you want to become?
yeah.
And
Because
I
a
always
lot of
like
them,
the
they
small
don't
things.
know.
I'm a big proponent for, again, like, do you just need a cup of coffee and a nice, like, quiet moment with yourself?
Yeah,
Or like I said, hop in the car and go do something you love.
right.
But
Right.
keeping it simple, I think, is important because it can definitely be overwhelming, especially when you think of the question, who do you want to become? That can be
Yeah.
a big ask, but just these little tiny steps in the middle get you there. So I love this idea. And I
It
think,
was, well, recently, without revealing anything, there's a client who had 8 children
ooh,
Mm.
and she didn't finish high school. And so we talked about that. What do you want to do now? You know what I mean? Because her youngest one is 2, and that's a long time to be a mom. I said, no, you love being a mom. I've been there. And don't feel shy to go back to college. I did. And
Mhm. Mhm.
so that's where we're at right now, just discovering what does she want to do and
I like
stuff like
that.
that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But
Oh, this is
I like my job so far.
It sounds like you do. It sounds like you're a good fit for sure.
yeah. Oh, this is fantastic. So, I just love everything that you're doing. And I think that it's like such a great illustration of like the ways that a lot of these things that we've kind of been talking about can really come together in a really wonderful way and like really actually be helping public health wise, get people into recovery and getting them kind of curious about change and goals and what things they'd like to work with and work from, and like a strength-based approach, and like,
Yeah.
that's just
So
so
that
good.
I saw that it was like a scholarship for a certificate of public health or something like that. I applied to that, so that's why I said, what am I getting myself into?
Yep, yep. I saw your name on the list.
I'm back. I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm back.
That's awesome. Well, you'll be amongst friends, you definitely. And then, the thing too about this, Alyssa, is like if you wanted to record this, you totally could too. If you go
Gonna
up to
practice, and I have my door closed, and my coworkers are like, "Who's she talking to in there?" Yeah.
and you can record it if you go to like a screen, see on the bottom of your screen there,
Okay.
because what you said was really powerful. I mean, I would love to be able to have people, watch and benefit from the knowledge that you shared just now. I mean, it's really helpful. But if you go to the bottom right, there's a little screen that can put you into full screen. And then at the top of your screen, there's a record
Oh
button.
yeah.
And when you hit that record, it'll bring you down to some options where you can record your audio, and you might just like play around with it and see what you think,
Like you said, it was hard to choose pictures that, and to make it to be like 3 minutes or something. And you're right. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to put, but
yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thought I picked up the main things that people talked about: fishing or traveling, or, somebody wanted to bead. I'm like, all right, it's gonna take years, but we'll try. Because when you first start reading, you think, yeah, I'm gonna do this, right? And then you get all the thread tangled and stuff, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Right.
This one guy was trying to show me how to do a dream catcher, and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I give up. He did it so fast, and I just couldn't do it. But I don't do macrame or knitting or anything like that. No.
But it comes back to that mindfulness skill,
Yeah.
right? Of
Yeah.
like that, how you're kind of trying to put good energy into something, and like, and that like a lot of it's cool too, because like people do photography, especially now with like some of the phones have really good cameras.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
you can do different kinds of like effects and different, yeah, it's been kind of fun during the pandemic. I think a lot of us got more creative, like I was describing, like I know Emily's super creative, but like I like started like doing some sewing and doing baking and just working on like my cooking skills and doing it's like I kind of go into these phases of like, and I don't think about it beforehand, like, okay, this month I'm going to work on this or whatever. But I just sort of like find these little tasks I do in my off time where for a while I was like doing some like a lot of dog videos because that was like something that was fun for me. But that's exactly what you're talking about, like with like the recovery piece is like, how do you take a look at yourself? And even as you were describing, I thought that was so important that you were like the who are you? A lot of times people do kind of lose sight of that when they're especially dealing with like trying to get into recovery, because of the numbing piece of that self-medication process you're describing is it's so powerful for folks. And then they do take some time to kind of have to reprogram, like identity wise, who am I, what do I want to do? That's such important work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
In this office, they have the 8 weeks, the inpatient, and they do a lot, like 12 hours a week, and they have a workbook and everything. And so by the time they get to me, I think they're sick of everything. And then the lady came back, she's like, no, please don't make me journal. I said, okay, we won't journal. But, that was so I kind of shoved it under the other papers.
Oh gosh.
It can get fun. But yeah, a lot of paperwork, they're like sick of paperwork, and oh my gosh. So I try to make it fun and achieve their goals. But we're way up here in Northeast Montana. There's not a lot of resources up here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the online AA meetings and, different links I sent them to.
Mhm.
Good.
Just a little tiny town. So
Well, it's yeah, and I think that's a lot of Montana, right? Like we have a lot
Yeah.
of small communities and that can be really a wonderful thing, like in terms of community support if it's working well, or it can be really isolating and that can be really a big challenge for a lot of us who've lived in rural areas or even have family in rural areas and trying to get them help or get them social support even when they need it. Yeah,
Mhm.
super
Jesse,
important.
did you have any comments? I see you're unmuted. I want to make sure that you can speak too.
Sorry, I thought I was on mute. No,
Oh,
I
oh,
don't.
no worries.
No, I don't really have I didn't do the video part of it. Just ran out of time this week. I thought about it multiple times. I'm like, ooh, I gotta get on that. And then it's Wednesday today.
That's
I know.
okay. And I'll send an email out to everyone else too, but like this could be an ongoing, adventure. If you do find
Yeah.
some time and you start dabbling in this and you still have a question or need some input, like I'll make sure that you have Annie's contact and you can always reach out then too. So if it's in a month and you finally get to it and then have a question, still happy to help and be of assistance wherever.
Yeah, same
Thank you
here.
for that.
Totally agree, and same here. And like, because it's honestly like it takes more time than we think these things, and then also yeah, a week goes by quickly, especially in the summer-ish.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. But you'll have my contact info, and you can ask me any questions anytime, and I'm happy to help troubleshoot and like send resources if you kind of jump into something and you're like, oh, I kind of want to know more about this or what have you, and I'm happy to help send some ideas. No pressure. It's more just to kind of get you some, a little bit of the basic knowledge of things and some curiosity around creating these things for sure. So I wanted to share a little bit. I'm going to go back into, okay, so one of the things I wanted to show you is just a couple of examples, and then we'll take a quick break. If that works okay? The first, hopefully, is we had worked with, there's a group of like myself and others in the Blackfeet community work to bring in a group called the Indigi Dreams, and they are an amazing group. They do a digital storytelling workshop for different levels. Kind of, they have a beginners, they have kind of more advanced trainings and those sorts of things. And it's two Native women who run this business, who also have just completed their doctoral degrees in kind of an interdisciplinary field in public health, and they specialize in creating these videos. So I was going to show you this video that is from a friend of mine, Wendy Bremner, and she does work with the victim specialty programs through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I thought we'd kind of take a look at this, and then we'll take a short break if that sounds okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
The news today, it seems our life is gonna change. I close my eyes, begin to pray, then tears of joy stream down my face with arms wide open under the sun. Long, long ago, first man and first woman were created, and old man spent time with them at their new place he made for them, because he loved them. He was filled with joy as he welcomed them with open arms. He was so excited to show them and give them everything needed to survive and thrive. He gave them love, deep, deep love to overcome any obstacle that came their way. He gave them laughter to chase away grief, sorrow, and negativity. He gave them prayer, ceremony, and song to help cleanse, heal, and renew. And he gave them connections with everything in the universe so they'd never be alone. For thousands of years, they thrived and became a strong nation. So strong that when Abraham Maslow studied them, he said 85% were as secure as the top 5% of people in his culture. He saw no violence and such love and respect for the children that he wanted to model his own parenting after it. In his hierarchy of needs, our people were at the top, having all of their basic needs met, including safety. They were welcoming babies into the world with no apprehension or anxiety. Soon after that, our people went through a horrific period of Holocaust on our very existence as Piikani. Oki nistunataniko akaya ko inimaki. My name is Wendy Lynn Bremner. I am a victim specialist for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, one of only 9 Native Americans in the country hired as such under the BIA OJS Hope, Healing, and Justice Project. I am blessed to work in the place where I was born and raised, but every day I see the ramifications of that horrific period that nearly destroyed our beautiful culture. Violence perpetrated on our people, now passing from generation to generation. Safety, love, and beauty replaced with trauma, fear, and shame. We are now at the bottom. We struggle to provide basic needs. Do our people feel safe? Only 4 out of 100 people here on the Blackfeet Reservation said they feel safe here. At Browning Middle School, our own children scored off the charts for the number of adverse childhood experiences that they've had. The national average is around 4. Our children had an average of 14. 75% are now suffering extremely high levels of unresolved trauma. I see the devastation every day. Women and children abused, men addicted, young pregnant mothers carrying our future, delivering addicted and traumatized babies. Is abuse, turmoil, and confusion the new norm for a people who once lived in such beauty? I was told to do whatever needs to be done to help the victims in my community survive violent crime. I feel the Creator gave me this role of doing what is natural to all Piikani people, to love and support our brothers and sisters. It is truly a blessing. I see in the faces of the relatives I work with that they struggle to survive. But they will survive because they are Piikani and we are survivors. In the next 1,000 years, our people will thrive as we reconnect to who we really are, because we know our ancestors and the tools of survival we were given can be called upon anytime. We will defeat the monster of violence through remembering the deep, deep love, the laughter, the prayer, ceremony, song, and connections we were given. And we will once again welcome our babies to this place with arms wide open.
It's a really beautiful example, and she did all her own music. She sang her own music on the video, and wrote the script and got all the images together. So so let's take a I don't know, should we take a 5-minute break? Okay, 5-minute break, and we'll come back. Awesome, thanks everybody. Well, this next section, sorry, we'll talk a little bit about some examples, and then I wanted to just briefly kind of go back through what digital storytelling elements are. So any questions from the video before the break or anything? Or
No questions, but the imagery was powerful. Like I like the old images.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the cool thing about older images, if you're on social media, there's a group on I think Facebook that's old Indian photos, and they're photos that are they're so old that the copyright protections like don't apply to them, so you can use them for these presentation type of things. So that's really great. So if you're looking to include copyright free materials into your video, and they have them arranged by tribal community. So it's nice that you can kind of pull from some of those images, and especially kind of really brings people into your video, kind of that story and things too. So yeah. And
Annie?
really, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'd love for you to talk more about that because you could tell there were some stock images as well used.
Yeah.
And where folks can find that, or just talk a little bit about making sure that you understand the copyrights and you have to own material and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, generally speaking, like the way often we talk about copyright is just like it's like respectful use, you know, oftentimes, and but it is something that there's protections by law around music and images and things that, you know, are you know, that artists have created that you may, you know, either have to get permission directly from the artist, or you may have to pay for use, that sort of thing. And so with these videos, that's why oftentimes you'll see people who are including like musicians that they know who are willing to, like, you know, donate their music or have their own images from their own camera, phone, or what have you. And then also some of these historical images. And you know, you still acknowledge where they're coming from, just like as if you were writing a paper, right? You would say, well, came from this article, I cite this information, and you acknowledge that information. But it's just a way that we can kind of respectfully kind of include information in our videos or our presentations that is still kind of adhering to those protections of copyright. So the ways that you can find some of those things though online is if you just go to your search engine, you know, Safari or Google or wherever, and look up copyright free images. That'll sometimes bring you into stock photos that could be helpful. Same thing with like music. You can look up copyright free music if that's something you'd like to include. What did I just, there's some databases that have those things too. And now with PowerPoint and other things too, they have a lot of like stock images that they have, and they, you know, you have permission by using Microsoft or whatever to use those images. And those are sometimes helpful. Like you'll notice in that video when she's talking about like alcohol use or tragic loss type of thing, like she used those stock images just to kind of convey like more symbolically in a way, like the emotion of that part of the narrative that's not necessarily you know, a person from our community that she's showing per se or what have you. Although there's some of that too, but it's a way that you can kind of be creative with regard to the ways that you construct the video. Is that helpful?
And I'll just add that, you know, if you do have some funds you can throw behind it, you know, using something like Canva, or like I said, if you have the Microsoft Suite or Adobe, again, a bunch of those stock image, and Canva's pretty good. They have a really extensive collection. So just to pay attention to those copyrights so you don't get yourself in trouble. And sometimes paying toward a subscription can actually give you a lot of really good materials.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Because I'm not as familiar with Canva, so like it's helpful for me to.
I have like the entire Adobe suite and all of these other resources, but when I need like a very particular image, like I need an icon that symbolizes conflict, so, you know, or something really specific, it's usually there. And then a lot of times you can make adjustments to you know, to graphics right there in that software. So
nice.
Yeah, you're able to draw on the images too. That's amazing. That's what I appreciate about it.
Yeah,
so
cool. It's a nice program for sure.
Well, it'll be on my to-do list to learn how to use Canva. So that would be really, I'm learning new things, you know, so thank you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. That was one of my questions about the historical photos and copyright and music, or if I put some power music or whatever. So I have to include that I do not have the rights or something if I use like a little clip of power music or something, or round dance or something.
Yeah, I mean, so the easy, like, so there's a couple answers there. So what you'll find is, so if you made a video and it had music and then you went to share it on social media, and if it is they have software that'll detect copyright protected music, and so depending on the platform, your video may be disabled because of that. And so what you can do is you can either reach out, if you happen to know the people say, hey, I'm making a video, it's like for educational purposes. And sometimes, well, depending on if it's like a local musician, native musician, oftentimes they will give you permission to use the music that you'd like to use. Less so if you're thinking about contacting the Rolling Stones, right? They probably wouldn't be as willing to let you work with you. And so there's those pieces. And then I am there are some ways too, if it's just a very short clip of music that is sort of not necessarily going to flag copyright protection processes, but it's better if you can find a way to get copyright free music. And then the Googling piece of that is really helpful. And then the images. So also Pinterest also has a lot of historical images, and that could be for the state of Montana, like historical photos, different kinds of things. I think anything that's beyond, like, I think it's 50 years, can be shared more widely and more accessibly. But it does kind of take some sleuthing. And so in the videos I've made, that's why I've like kind of found people who I know who are musicians. Like I have a friend who is part of a drum group, and he gave permission for me to use some of his songs and videos that I might make and that sort of thing. And so that's helpful. It's one helpful way. Or, and you can even just record, people that you may know and things. And
It was smart of her to sing that song, like the song she used, and then she just sung it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Ideally, if we were all so talented, that would be the way to go. I don't know if anybody would want to hear me sing, but
Me either.
But someday. Yeah. So those are a few things you can do. Yeah, for sure. Like I was saying last time, I have a child who plays the harp, and so I've been using more of that harp music and that sort of thing. And then if you're just sort of like playing around with things too, Instagram has what's called Reels, which is a very similar software to what I'd shown you with the iMovie. And that has more commercially available music that you can use. And there's like limits of how long they'll let you use like clips for, that sort of thing. But it works pretty well. Yeah. So like it's something that you can definitely, what I don't think you can do is necessarily like import layers of audio. So if you had like a narration, like we've seen in some of the examples, that's harder to do if you're using music as well. Unless you're using the app that shall not be named. I think at the state we can't talk about one app that's been made illegal. I don't know if it still is. I don't know. Anyway, but in that app you can mix your audio. And I just don't know about Instagram. Have you tried Instagram, anyone? The Reels? I've started to like look into using it, and there's another. Oh gosh, there's a couple other apps that I've started to look into a little bit too. Facebook does have a reel option as well, so that you can do some basic things too.
It should work the same, I think, as Insta, because they're both owned by Meta. So Insta and Facebook should be about the same.
But yeah, those are just different options. But so I wanted to switch gears just a little bit and just kind of wrap up our discussion on here at these different icons. These are different ways to be able to look at your slides. So you could if you wanted to sort them, you could make this, and then you can move things around if you're going to work in PowerPoint to do a video. And then this is just the normal way. And then whoops. What did I press? Always press escape if you get trapped somewhere. And then if you want to do the slideshow mode, you do this little here. So what I wanted to show you too is like under recording, you can play around with some of these options. So you can do different ways of recording your audio, and that'll capture your slides as well. what I often do, like for courses and things, is I'll have my slides up and then record my audio in Zoom, and then that way I can upload that into one of our, like, we have Moodle right now. We're going to have a new teaching. I can't remember the name of it. I've blocked it out, but enter your class, or you can also put it into Vimeo or those sorts of things. So last time we talked, the first session, we talked about the importance of meaning, and how when we construct meaning from our world in different ways, that can really impact behavior. And so public health messaging that's really based in a meaningful way of like telling us why things are important, how things maybe can change. Really important. Session 2 is more about the basics of digital storytelling. We talked a little bit about how people change, and we think about behavior change is really the most challenging aspect of public health. When we think about, we're all creatures of habit. And so the things that we like, to do, or we do to cope with some of the things that are stresses in our lives, become habitual. And so, the theories of change, we talked a little bit about how, people have different places they're at with regard to how open they are to changing things within their lives. And we think about people who are like maybe contemplating change, even pre-contemplating, which is like kind of thinking about changing, and then people who are, fully ready to like make changes within their lives. And that can vary at the individual or community level. And so the usefulness of some of these kinds of like strategies of like looking at video and public service announcements and podcasts and things is that it really can help to engage people who are feeling excluded or marginalized. So I showed you a couple different examples. Theda Newbreast, some of you may know from her work. Oh, no, what's going on here? Okay. She's been she works for Native Wellness, and she does some of the GONA, which are the Gathering of Native American Trainings, and does a lot of really great work. She did a video blog called The Power Hours during the pandemic, and really talked a lot about different dynamics of health and public health. Her background is in public health. She has an MPH. And so she's a great person if you want to look up any of her videos. I'll show you. She was also in Reservation Dogs. So for those of you who are fans of those shows.
I love that show.
Yes. So she was the one who was doing the sexual health videos.
No
Do you
kidding.
remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think her name was Auntie Priscilla or something on it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So in real life, she actually totally does videos like that. Like she works for the Native Wellness Institute and has, I mean, hundreds of videos that on any, many different topics. And so, has made digital stories and actually submitted some of her stories to film festivals, which is really cool. And she won an award for one of them that she made during our workshop. And I was trying to see if it was up. Yeah, so the Why the Women in My Family Don't Drink Whiskey is here.
Okay, Nixikoa. Nistu nidaniko okstukama. Nistu amskapi pikani. Nistu bitsatsiko matan. I'm a miracle survivor. We once asked Irene Lastar how to say resiliency in our language, and she paused for a long time and said that when men returned from battle alive or during the Korean War, when everyone died and the Blackfeet was still standing, they called him Botsitsikomadan. It means miracle survivor. I'm relearning my language, so I pray every day in my language, asking the ancestors to help me. I'm coming up on 52 years of age, and I realize I've spent half my life on my reservation and half my life in the non-Indian world. That's why I'm half off. It is funny. I was born to Betty Bolshu Cooper and Pete Newbreast. I remember living in a small house with no electricity or running water. I remember being surrounded by love and by my 4 grandparents. My favorite picture is of me in my mother's belly with my grandma Irene Bullshoe Awalski. And my other favorite is my grandma Agnes Ironpipe Nikki, holding me and 2 of my cousins in front of a teepee on Big Badger. I'm the baby in the middle. She said she felt rich with all her new babies. One night I had a dream that I was passed out on my mom's couch. And when I opened one eye, I was inside a teepee, and some old-time ancestors were discussing me in Blackfoot. I felt ashamed. They talked of my behavior and if I was worth saving. I woke up and I knew the jig was up. I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. I went through 2 treatment programs, the Betty Ford Center and then an all-women's treatment program. My parents both were put in a boarding school when they were young, and they both ran away. Their dream was for all their children to graduate from college. I have 2 degrees from the University of California at Berkeley. My family experienced the historical trauma aftermath of alcoholism, suicide, and mental health crises. My mother always encouraged us to powwow dance, made sure we had Indian names, and she sun danced. She always said, for the first 40 years of your life you'll learn how, and the next 40 what counts. At 40 I fasted for 4 days, and this led to dancing for 9 years. I had a dream about receiving a pipe, and when they were handing it over, I exchanged it for my 17 credit cards. I want to teach my daughter some of these Indian lessons, to be rich in Indian stuff instead of being materialistic. One of the toughest things I faced as a parent was coming to terms with my daughter's meth addiction. She's now in recovery and uses the best of both worlds to maintain her wellness. I have a fierce passion to create a better world for my daughter Amanda and for our future generations. My wish for them is to choose the best of both worlds. Time is holy. It's not a calendar with events. The stars, the moon, the sun have a cosmic plan. They say when we are born into this world, we are crying and everybody is smiling. And when you leave this world, you should be smiling and everyone should be crying. My journey so far is to take the best of both worlds.
So that was a oops. Yeah, it was a really great video, and she's got some others that are online as well. That are she's really generous in like sharing her information and about her journey. So being able to to take a look at some of her other videos, would be great. Yeah, and she is Priscilla in Reservation Dogs, so you can see her there too. But she does a lot of really great work around recovery and helping people who are struggling and to stay sober and have a sober lifestyle and things. So it's really good to see her work. And one of the things that you'll notice within this is that we have when we talk about the digital storytelling, so the first thing you do is you look at choosing a topic. And for some of us, it might be like you're doing, you're the topic, you're telling your story. You're kind of working, walking people through your life and like decisions that you've made or things that you may have struggled with yourself. And looking at, telling that journey and what are the things that helped you the most across that time. So choosing a topic can be really helpful. And that's why at the beginning of today, I kind of reviewed some of the health disparities that we see in Montana, because any of those could be really great examples of ways. And then working with somebody tell their story. And so it's really helpful actually to use this when people are working through recovery sometimes, if they're looking at getting ways to kind of share their stories. It can be a really powerful way to do that. So looking at examples is helpful because different people have a different, approach and voice when they create these digital stories and film. And so so that's really helpful as part of the process. And writing the script is like, we talk about the hourglass, kind of going from the general down to the specific, and then creating that visual shot list is really, a important part of that. So I think this photo in the background too is like a digital stock photo from probably PowerPoint, I think. And so, but some of these things are just really, really helpful. So selecting images, and then for many times we'll actually, capture images and video as part of a workshop experience. And, I use my phone quite a lot to do that. And then setting it to music, which is an optional part. Whoops, sorry about that. Of the process, but it can be a really great way to kind of bring people into an engaging format for your video and kind of add an emotional piece, like you saw with Wendy's video. It really does set the mood. It talks, about like, it's part of her personal kind of connection to that story and why the work that she does matters to her so much. So it can be really helpful. And then video editing, some of the things that are the fine-tuned pieces of things is, getting things the right timing so that the video that you have matches the narration, recording your narration. I mentioned this last time, but, using that voice recorder is a good option. Also in PowerPoint, you can record directly. Having transitions between your slides for videos is helpful. I have found that those transitions, the simpler the better, because there's some really wild transitions you can use out there in some of the, flashing strobe and this and that. And, and I just think a fade to black is usually the best type of transition to use. So it's not distracting too much from your actual video. And then audio, and then mixing it all together, and then publishing. So those are kind of the basic dimensions. And as we talked about last time, that choosing the topic can be really helpful. And, just so grateful for the example today where you talked about bringing people into a really compelling story, the work that you do, the work in recovery that you're doing, the importance of identity. Who are we? Who am I? And how do I convey that? It's a story that only you can tell. And that's the cool thing about creating these kind of formats. And then what are unique ways that we can solve the problem? And that's a lot of times what we're interested in from the public health perspective is, how do I do this, effectively? So when you're looking at examples, you can take a look online. There's examples on YouTube. There's examples on YouTube is nice because you can kind of search different ways. There's ways you can add to your story. There's not quite a lot of TED Talks and things, which can be a helpful way if you're looking at a specific, say you wanted to do a specific set of recovery videos and you wanted to look up a really good TED Talk that kind of frames your training and looking at what are the ways that we change, what are the things that we find encouragement from, and those sorts of things. So the solutions that others have tried can be really helpful. And I mentioned last time, like Google Scholar, YouTube, social media, those kinds of places can be really great ways to find examples. And then also to share your videos that you create with others. So the script writing, I just wanted to briefly kind of make sure we talk about how the writing is so important. We talk about a little bit about sometimes for people who are new to writing or writing script type of things, it can be a real struggle, and trying to do that clearly and concisely in a half a page, right? Because a half a page of text is about 2 to 3 minutes worth of video. And so story sharing and community style is like what we call like a talking group or group, using Post-its, using a whiteboard, having individual discussions, and then revising it so that you get your script down to like the place you want it to be. And a lot of times too, it's helpful to just make that script just not necessarily be like we were talking about last time, like it's not grammatically correct all the time. It's like how you talk, how you would talk to a friend. And so you kind of want to revise it until you feel really comfortable kind of walking your listener through the story that you're sharing. I say 5-minute video max. Shorter is really more powerful. For quite a while, some of the video sharing platforms limited your video to like 30 seconds. And now I think you can do a little bit longer, but part of it is just people tend not to watch it if it's really long, you know, on some of the, especially younger people and things like that. They're kind of really have kind of become conditioned to watching shorter videos. But the key is that using those keywords, key story elements, and then having that half a page. And then your shot list is where you're actually visually mapping it. And so, and that could be literally like, you know, creating, here's your theme, you know, tobacco use. Here's your key story. Somebody that you know who had struggled with tobacco use and wants to tell their story about how they quit. And so key concepts, key characters, and then conveying the emotion of some of the struggles that they've encountered. How are ways that they have coped with triggers, that sort of thing that make them feel like smoking or what have you. And then you know, examples. And before we wrap up, we'll watch this warrior movement video too. And then briefly, just the processes. You just collect those images, you organize them, and you create a story. And I mentioned this last time too, but like part of it is like, especially for all of us, you know, we get attached to our images, especially if it's a photo of your baby or your family, your friends, you know, people maybe who have passed even. So being able to like edit those down to, you know, a short amount of them, you know. So we're talking about if you're doing a 2 to 3 minute video, you know, you're maybe having 12 at the most images or something, you know. So that's and less if you have actual video content, right? That's going to take up more time. So that can be difficult. And so sometimes, you know, helping encourage people through that process is really a helpful thing too. So we talked about the spoken word, how it's just a really great way to be able to convey your stories, get people engaged. Phones have these great voice memo apps. You can also at Walmart or wherever buy these little voice recorders if you prefer, and those can record an MP3 file, and then you can upload that into you know, any of your editing software as well. I mentioned GarageBand, and there's other apps that you can use, and they can then be stored as MP3 files and then created into like a video file. But speaking slowly, clearly, and with emotion are all kind of key aspects of that. So you'll notice like with Theta in her video, you know, in real life, she speaks a lot quicker at a faster pace and things, but she intentionally was really speaking slowly, you know, being clear, and then really kind of trying to emphasize the emotion for the relationships that she shared about in that video. And so that helps you later, because then you can link as you're editing your video to those kind of key pieces and find like maybe a really special photo that you know, conveys some of the emotion that you're trying to communicate. So that's really helpful. And then editing is the part that is put on music, have tea. It takes a while to shorten clips and to add the visual transitions. And, you know, if you want to have it be something that is really, you know, like at a professionally kind of edited kind of, and you can sharpen, adjust color, those sorts of things. But then there's also like super just none of this has to be complicated. Some of the best videos are the ones that are just like, you know, fun and just capturing a moment and like helping people kind of think about, and those can be really very easy to capture, and then that's you know, really sometimes some of the best videos are those that that are we call it kind of I don't know what the term is, but you know, just on the fly kind of thing. So but those are kind of some of the pieces that we do when we do the editing. Okay. And so last time I showed you an example of how to do this in iMovie. This is why I wanted to like run through how to do some actual editing more so, but I'll show you a little bit of, I get this wheel of terror right here. But essentially, if you're using iMovie or other software, this is basically what it looks like. And your space bar allows things to play and gives you a little bit of a idea of how your images are going to look. So I had to include my dog here. And then normally it's not working right now, but you hit the space bar and it'll pause. And that'll allow you to edit the images, and you can, like for here, I can take out the audio that you hear in the background. You can shorten the length of the video. If it's a photo, like the photo in the middle of the screen here, you can change the way that the video focuses on different aspects of your image. And you can change what we call the Ken Burns effect as well. But that's the basics of how we do that. So, and that was kind of like where we were at, other than the tips around publishing and sharing, which I wanted to just briefly remind you. You know, after you review, edit, and you finalize your project, you save it to an MP4 file or a video file. You can upload that into places like Vimeo or YouTube or social media, or you can just have it on a like thumb drive, like one of these guys, and that can be shared at different audiences, and you know, I share them in classrooms, and different folks will share them in different places. And then the tips, kind of just to kind of make sure we're on the same page with this, is like, you know, making sure you have others review. And this is helpful because all of us make mistakes of like mispronouncing a name, misspelling a name. We may have included photos that are copyright protected or music. So it gives us a chance to kind of correct any mistakes that we may have. I personally disable comments, especially if it's something like on YouTube or what have you. And that just saves a lot of headaches in case people, you know, decide to be trolls and post, you know, negative comments or links to things that, you know, you don't want to have out there. And then there's a lot of, unfortunately, bad things on the internet and things. So I highly recommend that piece. Similarly, if you're on social media, like different things, you can you know, just review carefully your privacy settings, and you can you know, also consider warning if a content is sensitive or maybe upsetting to viewers. And then you want to make sure you have gained permissions before sharing, and that includes if you're working with young people, with youth, getting their permission as individuals, and then also their guardians' permission. And then if you're working with tribal communities, you know, sometimes you have to work with the culture committee or others to make sure that things are approved to be shared if it's sensitive or cultural information. So that's what I had for today. And I'd like to see if there's any questions, and then I wanted to show just a couple kind of wrap-up videos to show just some examples. Okay, so we're back at the iMovie. I wanted to just show you. Here is where you can change the audio. There's a little button here that you can press, and then you can mute or unmute your audio for a video clip. And then you can also change, I was saying the cropping here. So if you wanted to crop to fill or fit, or which is just basically using a full screen, or you wanted to be fancy and use what's called the Ken Burns effect. Ironic, he will be here tomorrow actually for a film premiere at the Wilma. But then you use your space bar to preview that. And as a way of like, it doesn't work as well with this photo, but you can kind of get a sense of like some of the things you can do visually. With this, you can kind of see, this is the editing here, and then you can do the Ken Burns. And the Ken Burns, basically, it shows what the image is going to focus on when you start and then when you end. And then you can change the shape of those just based on preference. So you can see here, it just adds some movement to your images if you have photos. And normally it's not so choppy like this, but my computer's struggling at the moment. But it gives you a sense. And then here, there's some actual bird singing. So you might want to keep that audio kind of thing. And then you could add your narration file here. But it's fun to play with, you know. Okay. Well, any questions? I think you have a little pretty good basic foundation and how to do. Yes, Emily. Always having to slow down speech for recording. I do as well. I tend to speak quickly sometimes. And I also I still, which is a good thing, I growing up in Montana, I sometimes don't say the ending parts, enunciate the ending parts of words, like what's happening, you know, like the G, things like that, where I try to pay a little more attention to how I pronounce things and things too. So, all right. Any other questions, or does this feel like it's kind of giving you like some of the basics of how to do the video construction and things that you can kind of attempt on your own, if you will?
Yes, I've learned a lot.
Oh, good.
I did too, and I appreciate like the resources and like the Theta's videos and stuff too, because we'll share some of those with some of my youth. I mean,
Yeah.
recovery stories are always powerful. So, and then coming from the Native American perspective, especially Montana tribes.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. There's a lot too. There's a lot online because a lot of folks, especially during the pandemic, have really gotten good at making the videos and things. And so this is just like a glimpse into what you can do. You know, there's all kinds of different ways you can apply this to your work and to helping people tell their stories. Well, thanks everybody. I think I'll probably let you guys wrap up a little early. Is that okay with everybody?
We'll give you 15 minutes back.
Yeah.
I like that. Nice on a Wednesday.
Right. And what I will do, and I will send you a link because I had mentioned I was going to share my daughter's video on Dogwood, but it doesn't, you see how it kind of, sometimes the video kind of pixelates when you're sharing it. So I'll send you the link to the actual video, and it's about 15-minute video that you can kind of see like a short film example.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Annie.
Yeah,
I will, like she said, I will make sure you guys all get resources. You'll also get an email with an evaluation link in it. We'll make sure that you have Annie's email, links to resources. And so if you keep playing with this and you want some feedback or need help at any point, please reach out. That's why we're here. And it was wonderful having you for 3 weeks in a row. I really appreciate you two showing up today.
yes.
You guys are hardcore.
Thank you.
Because we're heroes. Yes.
Yes. And thank you so much. And thanks, Alyssa, for sharing your project with us.
Yes. Thank you.
And yeah, as you move forward, if you think of other ways of presenting it or need any help, definitely reach out as well. So have a wonderful rest of your morning, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.